Hello. Hi, Debbie.
Assalamu alaikum, Rabbi. You were up early this morning.
Oh yeah. That's already late.
Yeah. I was in the car. Yeah.
I had a great idea. I don't know if it could work. It was just for the fun, but maybe we could get a bunch of hospital scrubs and bake matzahs.
Hi, Rabbi. It's I hear, but I don't know if it is advised.
No, we got scrubs and masks and hats.
I forgot I'm even wearing this mask on my head. I ran out last night, picked up 1,000 masks. I got to tell you, I didn't think I would need them. I walked into the office, and if I didn't give them out, they probably would have left.
Yeah.
Maybe we could dedicate the learning for Yossi Khan's father-in-law.
Good. We fill in for all the chaylim. We have
All the chaylim.
What's his name? I just said it to him.
Yeah. Michal Ben, Miriam.
Miriam. Remember, sir, yeah, I got a couple new names today also. Shol Yedidi Yisrael Ben Rivka Rochel. That was it. All right, Tim Yishmar. That's all call Yisrael. Okay, everybody ready? Moshe, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So we learned the Mechaber and the Ramah, which is the core of what we call Shulchan Aruch yesterday. And so we're going to go to the Mishnah Berurah. I picked out a couple of specific Mishnah Berurahs rather than try and learn all of them in a short period of time. So if you open up your Mishnah Berurah to the first Siman to Tav Chav Tes, so it says the halacha started off that you have to start learning the halachas of Pesach 30 days. So if you take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, we're going to look at the Mishnah Berurah, the Aleph. Shalin b'Hilchos Pesach we start learning Hilchos Pesach. So the Mishnah Berurah says Sharei Moshe I'm a Pesach Rishon and I'll call Hilchos Pesach Sheni, because Moshe Rabbeinu was giving the halachas of Pesach Sheni on Pesach Rishon. So we know that it was given 30 days in advance. Then b'Shar Yom Tov Nami Darshan Kailim, and therefore we also every other Yom Tov also should be the same thing. Saying therefore there's a general rule to learn all the halachas of every yom 30 days before. But the Vilna Gaon says Shavuos, which is only 1 day or 2 day yom is good enough 1 day to learn the halachas before. This is the next one. Then this where it says Daled. If you look on the bottom, he gives a quote. Daled is the Beis Yosef, right? So this he takes straight out of, as we said yesterday, the Shulchan Aruch of the Torah with the commentary of the Beis Yosef, and he brings the Beis Yosef here la'alacha. V'yesh Omrim, there are those who say that the 30 days requirement is only on Pesach. Because Pesach has so many halachas that we have to learn. Kegoin, for example, Tchinas Chitim, what you have to grind the wheat, Vafiyas HaMatzah, baking the matzah, Hagalas Kelim, Ubir Chametz. That's another thing we have to figure out how we're going to do Hagalas Kelim this year. Maybe we have just one person at the door at a time. We'll figure that out. Ubir Chametz, and also to how to burn the Chametz. Because all these halachas, if they're not done according to the halacha Kaidim Pesach, Pesach, you can't fix them once Pesach starts. Right? You didn't do Hagalas Kelim, you can't do Hagalas Kelim on Pesach. Masha Enkein, B'Shai Yom Tov, whereas the other Yom Tovim, if you didn't do something that you needed for Yom Tov, such as cooking, etc., you could still get it. You can borrow a lulav and esrog, but you can't go out and bake matzahs. You can't do beer chametz on Pesach. Okay, enough for a couple of days before. But therefore, no question, every single yontif requires that we learn the halachas of the yontif, because we got that straight out of the Gemara in Megillah Daf Lamed Beis. What does it say there? It says, Moshe Tikalam Yisrael Shushalim V'Darshim Binyan Shal Yom Hilchos Pesach B'Pesach. This goes all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu taught Klal Yisrael that before every yontif, you have to make sure that you're learning the halachas pertaining to the yontif, the halachas of Pesach, for Shavuos, and for every single yontif, Sukkah, etc. It requires that we know the halachas of every yontif. Okay, we're going to skip over to the next page. In the Mechaber itself, we have the Ramah. The Ramah added on the top of the first page, Hago minhag liknoi schitim l'chalkel laniyim l'tzarech Pesach. There's a minhag to buy wheat and hand out the wheat to poor people, whoever lives in the city. So if you come down, take to Mishnah Berurah. It's the Mishnah Berurah's Hay, which is the top line of the Mishnah Berurah. Yud Beis Chodesh, and that the requirement was that poor people, per person who lives in a city for 12 months. Okay. If we see that somebody moves into our city, or we call into our community, that he's planning on moving in and living there, Chayev, you're obligated to provide for him, even though he's less than a year. Fine, b'shar tshuva. We'll take a look at the shar tshuva maybe. V'din zed yud beis chodesh shayach gam lo'ani she'az chayav l'litan b'shar kishar niyayer. Same thing who happens. This 12 months applies to the poor person. Im dat v'shtakel alter chayav l'litan lo. If a person has intention on living there, we have to give it to him, even if he's not there for 12 months. Because v'achrein b'shem asmak. In Sefer Mitzvahs Koden, one of the Rishonim. Is brought down the Achrenim bringing the name of the Smak, who was a Rishon. The Idna nowadays, Nahagim b'chol tzedakos bein the Inyan balabais bein the Inyan ha'niyim b'shloshim yoyim. We don't wait for 12 months for an obligation of a person who is a part of the community or to who give it to. We wait only 30 days. As soon as the person's in the community for 30 days, he would call it, to say it, he's ours. He's ours, then we have to make sure we provide for them. Now this is not just a nice thing to do. This becomes a chiyuv and halacha. And even if there's a poor person who comes in who doesn't live, who hasn't part of our community for 30 days, even though we're not mechuyev to, we're on the Mishnah Berurah Tav Chavtes in Sivkot and Hay. It's on the second page. In the Mishnah Berurah. If a poor person comes in, even if they're just visiting, but they're poor, it's true you don't have to provide everything he needs before Pesach, but you have to give him every single day what he needs. You have to give him 2 meals a day. Even during the week. As long as he's living in the city. And for Shabbos, we have to give the poor person money for 3 meals. And we're going to get to that later. The next halacha, which is what I really want to get to, is we have to give to this person. So he says, who has to give? He says, yes, every person who lives in the city has to give. He says, who's in? He says, Vafilu Talmud Chacham. Even a Talmud Chacham, even though Talmud Chacham normally is not obligated to give, as they called it, a head tax, which was given to all people in the community so that everybody should be contributing. Still, for Pesach, even a Talmud Chacham has to give in order to be able to help the poor for Pesach. How much does he have for us to give? Each person according to what they can afford. ואלה המשמעתים עצמם מליטל קמח עניים, yesh oven b'yodam. If somebody who finds a way to get out some reason to have an excuse out of giving to the aniyim is a tremendous avera. So it's very strong words. And then I want to point out in my Mishnah underlined in the following lines. It is known that the poor people are waiting for Pesach. And if they're waiting, and if they end up waiting, and they're oppressed and they're hungry, and you turn your eye away from him, you do Gemara b'Sanhedrin. So you have to know what the Gemara in Sanhedrin Lamed Hey. Call Tanis. I have the Gemara here. Let me finish the quote from the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Call Tanis Amar b'Yitzchak." Let's say Amar b'Yitzchak, the Amar b'Lezer. It goes Amar b'Yitzchak. Call Tanis shemalina b'Yasat Tzedakah. Every fast day, they had to make sure that they gave the poor people to have food before the fast, so that when they're done with the tainus, that they will have food to eat after the tainus. Any tainus in which they push off the food, the tzedakah that they will need, listen to the Gemara, ki'ilu shayver damim. It's as if you're spilling their blood, and it brings a pasuk. This time we're giving them bread and tomorrow we give them the bread and what they need to eat. And Rashi, and the Mishnah Berurah says, look at the Rashi, and the Rashi is, let me see when I get to Rashi. I saw it earlier. Oh, here it is. It's Rashi Kol Tanis. This is on Sanhedrin and on Lamed Hey. So Rashi says, Kol Tanis, every fast in which the people you delay giving to the poor, the tzedakah they need before Pesach. So he says, there was a minute that at the night of the fast, they would give tzedakah. And the poor people were waiting for this. If you may push off till the next morning, you're going to find that the poor people will have to be hungry for another night. Because that's what they were relying on, that they would have food. How would they have food for after the fast? Because of the fact that they collected by the fast, collected so that Anim would have. So the Gemara says it calls it very seriously. And so the Mishnah Berurah is coming up with some really strong language. That we give Moras Chitin is what the people are waiting for. The poor people are waiting for Pesach to come. And if we don't prepare for them and they have to kind of think about coming to Pesach at the last minute, not know if they're going to have enough food for Pesach. So Mishnah Berurah says, look at the Gemara, it says, Kilu Shefer Damim, as if we spill blood. So it's a very good, Moras Chitin is not just a nice thing to do, but in halacha, it's a really strong requirement. So we have to make sure that we are providing as much as we possibly can, and we have to make sure that we are providing for the people who are in our community. Which, just give us another side note, in Hilchos Tzedakah, it says there's a set of priorities for how we determine who we give tzedakah to. And the first requirement, of course, is our people who are members of our family, then the people who live in our neighborhood, and then the people who live in other neighborhoods in the city, and then Eretz Yisrael, and then other cities. That's the requirement, that's the Kedima. So it's true, we get a lot of visitors who are people coming to collect money for tzedakah from different cities and maybe even from Eretz Yisrael. But the requirement is first for the people in our neighborhood and our families in the neighborhood, and then we talk about the other neighborhoods in our city before the poor of Eretz Yisrael. And of course, the poor of Yerushalayim have the Kedima before all the poor of the rest of Eretz Yisrael. So while there's also all sorts of very important tzedakahs to provide for, there is a set of priorities. Okay, we're going to now move over to the next Mishnah Berurah that I picked out, which is on Sim Taf Lamed, it's on top of the next page, Boisif Echad, which it says, the halacha says, Shabbos Lefnei Pesach Kohen Oisa Shabbos HaGodol, Lefnei Anes. Shabbos HaGodol is called the miracles. The Mishnah Berurah brings the history of this nace. If you take a look at Mishnah Berurah, Sif Kod Aleph. Mipnei Anes, because of the miracle, Shebishana Shiatzim Mitzrayim, on the year the Bnei Yisrael went out of Mitzrayim, Hoya Asar B'Nisan B'Yom Shabbos. The 10th day of Nisan was on Shabbos. Now, they went out of Mitzrayim on Wednesday. So Shabbos, V'lochu Kolechem Yisrael Sel Pesach. There, that was the day. That Shabbos, they took, every Jew took, all the Klal Yisrael took the lamb for the Korban Pesach. V'kashu b'kari amita, and they tied the lamb to the bedposts. Moshe Chasav says in the pasuk, "B'asar l'chodesh hazeh, v'yikra lahem ish sel lebeis avos sel habayis." V'hamitzrim, so that we know from the Gemara, and he continues. V'hamitzrim rozeh, the Mitzrim saw what the Jews were doing. V'shalom lo mazeh lachem. He says, "Why are you doing this?" V'heishivu, but Israel answered, "L'shachter l'shem Pesach b'mitzvos Hashem aleinu." Hashem told us that we're going to shech this animal for our Yom Tov Pesach. And the Mitzrim, they were grinding their teeth. They're grinding their teeth because we're slaughtering their God. But they didn't have the power to say anything against Bnei Yisrael. That was the Bnei Yisrael. Shabbos, and since the 10th day of the month, the day that they took the lamb was on that Shabbos, that's why the Shabbos before Pesach is called Shabbos HaGodol, to remember the nace that we took the lamb, and the Mitzrim could not even, they didn't have the power, they didn't have the strength to even protest. A great nice. Okay, we're going to skip to the next page, because we can't do all the Mishnah Berurahs, but I want to do some of the more important, what I thought was important. If you still skip to the next page, so we're now in Siman Tov Lamed Aleph. That it says when it comes time to b'dikas chametz, you're not allowed to sit down to eat, and you're not allowed to leave, not allowed to learn, even if you have a set time to learn. That's up in the Mechaber. The Mechaber says you're not, that the mitzvah of b'dikas chametz is so important that you cannot even allow to sit down and learn. So take a look in the Mishnah Berurah on Siman Cotton Zion. The Yilmoid shouldn't sit down to learn. Some say even if it's a half hour before Shkia or before Tzeisek Chavim, you're still not allowed to learn. Dilma Asi Lamshucha Harba, because maybe you'll get a learning and you'll drag the time, and then you'll forget about doing chametz. Loi Shabikesh is exception. And Loi Shabikesh Lechat Shaskirenu. Shiovazman said if not, you have to have, the only way out is if you have somebody else who will come and tell you it is time to do b'dikas chametz. Then you're allowed to start to learn. Some say no, that's only tzesik chavim on, that's also. So then he brings another quote, another opinion. And even to those say it was also to start to learn, and also we're talking about sitting down and learning at home. But if there's a regular set shir in the shul, in the Beis Medrash, mutter, you're allowed to, even after Marv, you're allowed to have a regular set shir. Because then he's going to have to go home. Then he'll be able to do the mitzvah. That's only if you sit down and learn a regular set halacha, something without the discussion. But if you get into the discussions of learning, we're afraid under any circumstances. maybe you will come to get drawn into the discussion and not do b'dikas chametz. So while it's an interesting halacha, it also tells something with which we don't often have the chance to do. When we were learning in yeshiva and when we were getting deeper into yeshivas, sometimes the discussions of the Gemaras got into really, I don't want to call it strong arguments, and you didn't notice that the time was missing. The time went by. And because of that, because Torah can do that, we get into the pilpul, we get into the discussion of Torah, the halacha says we know that people get caught up in learning Torah, which tells us how we're supposed to be learning Torah, and that would make us forget about b'dikas chametz the night before Pesach. That's how strong learning Torah could draw us in, and therefore you have to not learn Torah until after b'dikas chametz. That's both halacha and a perspective on the beauty of learning Torah. Okay. We're going to move over to the next halacha of next siman, and din birchas b'dikas chametz. And before it says, started off at the beginning of that halacha, Kaidim she'ascha livdek up in the mechaber, Kaidim she'ascha livdek yivarach hashikishon b'sois mitzvano al bir chametz. That's the bracha that we have to make. Okay, so if you take a look at Mishnah Berurah Siman Cotton Beis, that's down below, Siman Cotton Beis. You got it? So it says yivarach, you should make the bracha. That's good that you should wash your hands during the Til Shadayim before B'dikas Chametz. But the real reason for it is that your hands should be clean because you're about to go in to maybe find chametz and touch it. So therefore, make sure your hands are clean. Gimel. Al bir chametz, the bracha that we make is al bir chametz. The avagav dein mevayel l'mocher, even though the real beer, the burning of the chametz, is not until tomorrow. The kalmuchem kibbut the b'dikas hu l'tzarich beer, but the reason why we're checking is so that we should be able to burn the chametz. Havim ein a beer, so checking it is a little bit like the burning of the chametz. Ein mevachin al b'dikas chametz, and therefore we don't make the bracha on the searching for the chametz. Because that's not the end of the mitzvah, that's just the beginning of the mitzvah. We don't make a bracha on bittul chametz, which is the mitzvah deraisa, or is to be mavat the chametz. So we might think, do you make the bracha on bittul chametz? We don't. Because bittul, which means a person giving up all ownership, that depends upon what's in a person's heart. We don't make a bracha on thinking. We make a bracha on action. In bir levar, but if a person made the bracha instead of al bir, and said levar chametz, yotzev lebediava, that's good enough. So I want to take a look in the Sharei Tshuva, which is the first parish on the top of that page. There's the Ber Heitev and Sharei Tshuva, Sif Aleph. See it, Simon Aleph? He brings Ayin B'Taz, U'Bi'adafram, he brings the Taz, the parish on the Shulchan Aruch, the Taz Turazov, and Yad Ephraim, Ayin, I forgot the name of it, I'll have to look at the abbreviation, B'Shem Ridvaz, the name of the Ridvaz, one of the great poskim of Europe, of Eretz Yisrael, Shenusach al Bir Niskan al Tchilas Asiyas HaMitzvah. The bracha is on the beginning of the mitzvah. Aval Tchilasa al Tachlisa, but the purpose of this bedika is Huabir. The purpose is to burn it, not simply to do the bittul, Shuhum Bachshav Shabalev, because that's only in a person's heart. And if it's only in your heart, we can't make a bracha. So there's a couple of different things we learn from this. That a mitzvah, that a bracha that we make has to be on an action, and the Mishnah Berurah, which we're going to, I don't know if we get to it today, talks about that the reason that we have to have beer and bittul, it's a Gemara in Pesachim, is because what happens if a person has a businessman? He's got a lot of chametz around. So he'll say, you know what? I'll just do what's mitzvah deraisa, and I'll do bittul. I'll say I don't own it anymore, and he'll that'll be fulfilled. The mitzvah deraisa. He's not over on lo yibah yorah bal yamatzah because he did what the Torah said was mavatal. So he says, but that he doesn't really mean it. And if his heart is not connected with his words, then even though he said the words, he said kol chamiyah v'chamiyah v'dika b'shus, he said the whole nosach. If it's not in his heart, it's not good. It's not a valid bittul. So I want to tell you a story, and it's in Inyanei Pesach. Inyanei Pesach is the Shabbos and Shuvas, as we talked about yesterday. Shabbos and Shuvas was the way that they communicated halacha back and forth between different communities, based upon circumstances that they had that were not so obvious in halacha. In the Sefer Inyanei Pesach, which was written with the Chuvas of Arzeder Motalon the Stipler, he brings an interesting tshuva. In one of the towns that was part of under his authority, called under his Magidas, I forgot the name of the town. Oh yes, the town was Ivankov. The town of Ivankov had it's a famous recorded story, but the town of Ivankov had a factory that produced white sugar. White sugar requires the process of taking what we call the beets, etc., and turning them into what we call regular table sugar, is a process which used to first produce molasses, and to the molasses they would add yeast, and that would cause the molasses, the gooey stuff of the sugar, to bubble up, and then they would be able to dry it out and produce what we call table sugar. That was the way they did them. Our sugar comes from either cane sugar or beet sugar, which doesn't require that. But the sugar that they were using required, that was the process. So they didn't, it was a big factory, and the owner didn't want to shut down the factory because he would have to get rid of all of the yeast. And the yeast those days they didn't buy yeast. Once they started the yeast process, they kept the process going from batch to batch, from batch of yeast to batch of yeast. If they would have to get rid of all the yeast in the factory, that would mean that even after Pesach, until they could produce enough yeast to start the factory going again, would be several weeks, and he would lose a lot of business. And so, therefore, he wanted to have a heter mechira to make to sell all of the yeast in the factory. So he brought the Shaila to the Rebbe, to Motalon the Stipler, and Motalon the Stipler wrote a big tshuva that says that mechira, even though we sell our chametz, but the Torah specifies kol sa'or, all the yeast, lo yimotze, should be right. He says, so therefore, yeast is worse than any other type of chametz. Why? Because any type of chametz, if you don't have it, you sold it to go, your mind goes off of it. But the yeast itself is something that, since he wants to have that yeast for after Pesach, you can't sell it. The mechira doesn't help. The owner of the factory who was a chassid, was still he was trying to find a way out. So he went to the Rav of his town, the Rav of Ivankov, and the Rabbanim of Russia were big Talmidei Chachamim, and he went and gave him a heter, and he wrote a shtar mechira. He sold the entire factory, including the yeast, to a goy. The minhag was that all the wealthy Jews, whoever could travel, the Chassidim didn't come to the Rebbe for Pesach; they would come for Shabbos HaGadol. That was, because you couldn't. Pesach had to be home, so all the Chassidim with the big tish was the Shabbos HaGadol tish. The chassid, the owner of the factory, was one of the wealthy Jews of the community. Also came. This story I heard from my father Zechron Baruch, who heard it from his Zayda, who was sitting there at the table, at the Shabbos table. I also heard it from the Square Rebbe's Gabba of Shaya Zechon Levracha, who heard it from Simcha Kabalenko, who was one of the Bonim who was also there at the Tish. So I have two sources for the same story. The Chassidim all gathered around the Rebbe's Tish, and all the, as if you've ever noticed, in the Babish still they would do it that way. All the dignified Yidden would stand behind the Rebbe at the Tish, and among them was this Jew from Ivankov. And they said that Zayder Matala walked into the Tish, and his face was burning fire, because he had written a tshuva to the community of Ivankov, and the community of Ivankov were all employees. That was the business of Ivankov. So a lot of people were relying upon this heter, upon the Steinbachir. And he sat down at the Tish and he said, "I don't understand. I told you that you're not allowed to sell the yeast. I told you many times you're not allowed to sell the yeast. I wrote a tshuva, you're not allowed to sell the yeast. How do you dare not sell the yeast? I told you that you're not, that's chometz shavar ala Pesach. And it was chometz shavar ala Pesach." Are I still on? Okay, because my picture just disappeared. Okay. Okay, there we go. Chometz shavar ala Pesach is, there's only one thing with halacha. Chometz shavar ala Pesach is besreifa. You have to you burn it after Pesach. It has to, if it's chometz on Pesach, and immediately after Pesach you have to burn it. There's no heter for it. And he says, he starts, and he went on for a long time talking about chometz on Pesach, how such that is it's the opposite of everything that Chazal gave, that the Torah gives us about Pesach, and how did they dare and do this? And there was one Jew who was there from Ivankov who was the pharmacist, the apotheek, Ramechel, the apotheek. That was the way the story goes. And he turned to the Rebbe and he says, "Rebbe, but that's not my business. My business, I'm the apotheek, I'm the pharmacy." So he says, "Mechel, gemein dich nicht." And Mechel, I don't mean you. Okay. Then I heard another part of the story. This I heard from Rabbi Shaya, that the Motel on the Staples Rebbetzin was the Baba Reitzer. The Baba Reitzer was the daughter of the Divrei Chaim, of Chaim of Sanz. And of course, we know that Chaim of Sanz was a fiery person. And they said, and so was the Motel's Rebbetzin. The Baba Reitzer was a fiery person. And she, of course, sat in the Ezra's Noshim listening to the Tish, and she saw how upset her husband was. So she walked into the Tish and started walking back and forth behind the Rebbe, yelling at the Chassidim of Ivankov, "How did you dare not listen to your Rebbe? How did you dare not listen to your Rebbe?" He went back and forth until the Zeder Motel turned to, says, "No, Reitze. We know that you're the Divrei Chaim's daughter. You've already proven that you're his daughter." Okay. Anyway, he says, "So the best Chassidim, ad ashpos fin Ivankov gein adoch mir." You have to know that the life force, the sustenance of Ivankov was put into my hands. I daven for you a whole year that you should have parnasa. And I say that chometz she'avar Pesach, that if chometz is your over on Pesach, is nidon b'sreifa. There's only one eitzah that should burn. The Yidden went back to Ivankov, and they sat down to the Seder, and a fire started in Ivankov. And the fire started burning. The fire started burning in the factory, and soon the fire spread to the entire town. So people already saw that there was a fire, a big fire. What did they do? Ivankov had a river that flowed through Ivankov, so they quickly loaded all of their belongings, emptied out their houses, whatever is valuable, onto wagons, and drove the wagons into the river. Chassidim said that not only did the houses burn, but the river burned. The water in the river turned into fire, and all of their belongings were destroyed. There's only one building that was left standing in Ivankov. Which was it? the pharmacy. The pharmacy was the only building that remained standing in Ivankov. Immediately, this was the Pesach night at the Seder. So my Seder Bleibele said they were sitting at the Seder. He says, my father, the Seder Motala's face was dark. He says, he was sitting there in a terrible, terrible mood throughout the beginning of Seder. In the middle of Seder, they had sent from Ivankov, they sent Goyim on horses running from Ivankov to on the Steipel. And in the middle of Seder, the Goyim came running in, Rebbe, Ivankov is on fire. And he said, yeah. And he says, that because that's the only how that Azay is the halacha. He says, but you have to know that I'm responsible for that. And therefore, he told all the chassidim who were there, the people who lived on the Steipel, everybody should set aside enough food for 2 meals for the meals for Yontiv, for all their families, set aside enough food. They'd take it up to Chol Hamoed, and everything should pack it up, and they hired wagons. They had goyim. They brought wagons, and everybody loaded food, clothing, whatever the people could spare for the first 2 days of Pesach, and they sent the wagons to Ivankov so that the Jews of Ivankov should be able to have food and clothing for the rest of Pesach. And then after Pesach, the Zeder Motel says, "Ich hab verbrennt Ivankov, elchev tzrik aufbauen." I'm responsible for the fact that Ivankov burned down. I will see that it was rebuilt. And he called all the chassidim from around the entire region. They brought money and they helped rebuild Ivankov. It's a story that I heard my father tell almost every Shabbos Hagadol. So these are to tell us that the Inyan B'dikas Chometz and Bir Chometz is not something that we take lightly. So I wanted to point out that there was a psak that came this the other day from Rav Padwa, the chief rabbi of London. He said this year, because of the coronavirus, he's being matter that you should sell chametz gomer. Normally, he paskins that the psak and the minig Yisrael is not to sell bread and real chametz in mechiras chametz. He says, but we don't know what the economy will look like after Pesach, and therefore he's matter that you should put aside food and sell it for after Pesach. Im chametz gomer. So I want to add to that, but that's the only thing. The exception to that, according to the Zeder Motel Psak, is not yeast. Yeast should not be sold, should not be kept under any, because according to Zeder Motel, there's no heter, mechira for yeast. That's an exception. Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion of these halachas. The only one we left off was the mechaber. Still, that was relevant to B'dikas Chometz, was Siman Tov Lamed Daled. That's a couple of pages later. We're going to learn the mechaber in the Ramah. Siman Tov Lamed Daled. The halachas that apply immediately after B'dikas Chometz. Boy Daled Sifim, and has 4 paragraphs. Aleph. You left over, you did B'dikas Chometz, and now you have Chometz for sure, at least the 10 pieces that you did B'dikas Chometz, but you have other Chometz in the house. You have to make sure that you put them away. Because otherwise you might end up having to do the B'dika all over again. For example, if you see that a mouse or a rat has ran in and grabbed some of the Chometz, or that you're missing a piece. You put aside 10 pieces of bread to do B'dika, and you go to bring the Chometz, and you see there's only 9 of them. So then you'd have to go and do the B'dika all over until you find the 10th piece of bread. But if you don't know that anything is missing, then you don't have to go back and do a whole badika all over again. Bimkaf olav keli. Let's say you found a piece of chametz. So the halach is, what should you do? Is take a keli, a pot, and cover it over so that you won't lose it. But let's say you went and you put it under a pot and you didn't find it. Ein tzarich livdek. You don't have to go again. Shabbat the other not because you know that some other person, rat's not going to pick up the pot, so somebody else took it, and I'm sure they ate it. That's why you covered it over with a pot. Or the person saw it and threw it out into the air. So therefore you should cover over with a pot. I'm sorry. If you cover over whatever chametz you have, you should put it away, hide it, or hang it. We call the bag or a box that you've done the b'dikas chametz. You should hang it up in the air. It shouldn't sit in a place where a mouse or a rat could get into it. Or you put it away in a cabinet where you don't have to worry about a mouse or a rat who might take it. That's similar. Siv base. Immediately after you did the bedika, you should be mevatel, give up the ownership of chametz. The young man, you're saying, here's the nusach that's straight out of Shulchan Aruch. Any chametz that's in my possession. I did not see and I did not get rid of it. Levatel, it should become completely ownerless. But the havoc after that should be like the dust of the earth. Ramah adds to it, v'yoymar, habitul, v'loshen shemevin. You should use the language that you understand. It's nice to say the Aramaic, but you should say in the language that you understand. If you use the language that's in Hebrew, if you use the Hebrew instead of the Aramaic, that's definitely good. But if you don't understand the Hebrew, but you should use every language that you understand, every person by itself. The Ramos adds, what we call the dealing with, as he was dealing with in Europe with a lot of people who were not familiar with it, who didn't understand the Aramaic or even the Lashon Kodesh. He passes that they should do Bittul Chametz in the language that they understand. And back in the good old days in Denver with Baalei Tshuva, that's what I encouraged them to take the Hebrew translation, the English translation, and say the English as well. And the Mechaber goes on, and it's good to do Mevatel again at the end of the 5th hour on Erev Pesach, before the 6th hour starts. Because once the 6th hour starts, yes, chametz is awesome. It's not, it doesn't belong to you anymore because it's also to have any honor from it. So therefore, you have to do the final bittul at the end of the 5th hour or before the end of the 5th hour when you do the burning of the chametz. Haggadah, the Ramah adds a footnote. When do you do this? After you already burned the chametz. That you fulfill the mitzvah, that the chametz is yours. If you're mevatel it before you burn it, it's not yours anymore. You're not burning your chametz. So therefore, the bittul chametz is what you say after the chametz that you're burning is already burned. And the quote for the Ramah brings that is from the Mayu. Gimel, bevittul hayoim, when you're mevatel the chametz during the day, yoimer, you should add a couple of other words to it. Techazita, lo chazita, that I seen it or I didn't see it. I got burned it, I didn't burn it. All of it should be kafir, and that's the difference between the bittul that we say at night versus the bittul that we say during the day. Siv Dalet. Shuluchai yochel avatel. You can designate somebody else to do the bittul. Kshemavatel shliach tzarich shiyamer chen tzishaplenis. If you having somebody else do it, you have to say, the person has to say, I'm mavatel that person's chametz. Yehei batel. That person's chametz should become batel. That's the tshuva Mari Brin. Im ein ish bebeisai. Let's say you're not at home. what should you do? Wherever you are, that's where you do the bittul. And if the man doesn't do it, they went someplace and the husband is not around to do the bittul, then the wife should do it. The wife has permission to give up the ownership of the chametz of her husband, even though the husband didn't do it or maybe didn't want to do it, which is another scenario which comes issues of shalom bayis. But still, the wife has to, because since the Torah wants him to do it, so we know that they're like every halacha with which a person protests against doing a halacha, that we're mazakeh him, we protect him from being over on the Isser, especially chametz, which is a chiyuv of course. So the halacha gives permission for the wife to move out to the chametz in case the husband is not available, or even if he doesn't do it. All right, we will then continue Bez Hashem tomorrow. I look forward to learning the halacha 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Bez Hashem, we'll continue with Hilchos Pesach. Everybody should have a wonderful afternoon. Time for mincha is what time? What time are we doing mincha? 7 o'clock. Okay. I look forward to everybody logging on so we can see each other and all daven mincha at the same time. Okay, David, I see that you were there. Very good. Bez Hashem, we're going to keep on learning every single day. We have to get through this way by learning the mechaber and then pick out special pieces of the Mishnah Berurah to cover a lot of halacha.
Shkach Rabbi.
Shkach.
Everybody be gesund.
Thanks, Rabbi.
David, everybody have a wonderful day.
You too, Rabbi. Yeah.